Hello again, welcome to Maths is Not a Mystery. We're going to be looking at decimals today, and we're going to be learning how to add, subtract and multiply them. We're going to start with adding and subtracting. The basic job of adding and subtracting is exactly the same as when you add and subtract regular numbers. But there is an important thing that you've got to remember, and that thing is related to the decimal point. However long the numbers are, however short the numbers are, the decimal points must always be in a vertical line. So when we write out this first question, 21.35 plus 2.486, write out the first one, 21.35, and then the second one, we're not worried about a nice neat edge going down below the 5 or below the 2. What we're worried about is having the decimal point precisely below the other decimal point. So there's the second decimal point. If you can see it, my pen's not working very well, so I'll switch it to another one. Okay, so decimal point goes underneath the first one, and then the 2.486 goes like that. So the numbers themselves are not especially tidy. Okay, we've got a wobbly line down there, we've got a wobbly line down there. That does not matter. If it concerns you, you can put a 0 in the gap. The 0 won't make any difference whatsoever, but you don't need to when you're adding. All that matters is that you've got this line here with the decimal point, and in the answer the decimal point's going to go there as well. Beyond that, you just carry on as normal. So this would be nothing plus 6 is 6. 5 plus 8 makes 13. Carry 1. 3 plus 4 makes 7, plus that other one is 3. 1 plus 2 makes 3. And the 2 plus nothing makes 2. So it's the same as an ordinary addition sum, providing we've got those decimal points lined up. When it's a subtraction, same rule applies. 39.4 minus 2.67, and again we've put the decimal points in line with each other, but this time when we are subtracting, if there is a gap over here where we clearly have got to do some subtracting from it, then we really need to put the 0 in, because that's going to help us with our subtraction. But once again, the key point is to get those decimal points in line. Doing the subtraction now, 0 takes 7 can't be done, so we're going to cross out the 4, make it a 3, make that say 10, and that's going to be 10 takes 7 is 3. 3 takes 6 can't be done, cross out the 9, make it an 8, put 1 there, make it 13, 13 takes 6 is 7. Decimal point goes underneath the others. 8 take away 2 is 6, 3 take away nothing is 3. So again, it's exactly like doing a regular subtraction, but those decimal points must be in a straight line all the way down the entire question. And that's the key point to adding and subtracting with decimals. Now what about multiplying? A few differences to deal with here. So first of all, we'll just start with some basics. Multiplying by 10 or 100 or 1,000. You're going to be moving numbers across the decimal point, and you're going to be moving them in terms of a number of places that relates to how many zeros there are in the number you're multiplying by. So when you're moving a multiplication by 10, you're moving it one place because there's 1 0. By 100, 2 places because there's 2 zeros. So if we were to start with 3.65 and multiply it by 10, we'd be moving it one place so that it's 36.5. Which way do you move it? Well, you always move it the same way. You're moving the numbers to the left. And can you check whether it's correct? Well, of course you can, because it needs to be bigger than what you started off with. You're multiplying it by 10. It was 3 and a bit there. Now it's 36 and a bit. So it's bigger. If you'd moved it the other way, it would be 0.3, so it would be smaller, wouldn't it? If we're doing it by 100, we're going to move it 2 places. So that same 3.65 times 100, well, that's going to be 365. because the decimal point has moved our numbers in two different places. If the question was something like 2.7 times 100, then we'd be moving it two places. Let's just take a look at that. 2.7. We want to move the decimal point. We've got to move it once there and then once again. And there's nothing there. So put a 0 there. You can put as many zeros as you want. So it would be 270 and then the decimal point, and then you can have zeros after that as well. Okay, so we're just moving the numbers across to make them bigger, make the number look bigger. If we're multiplying two decimals together, so here's 0.3 times 0.2. First of all, when you're doing that, ignore the zeros, just look at the numbers that are the sort of relevant numbers, which is the 3 and the 2. Multiply them together, and 3 times 2 makes 6. So the answer is going to have a 6 in it somewhere. But obviously the answer isn't 6, because 0.3 times 0.2 can't be 6. 3 times 2 is 6. What do you do with your decimals? Well, what you do here is quite simple. You count up the number of numbers behind a decimal point in the question. Now there's a 3 there that's behind the decimal point, so that's one number. There's a 2 here that's behind a decimal point, so that's 2 numbers. In the question there are 2 numbers behind the decimal point. So in the answer there must also be 2 numbers behind the decimal point. To make that happen, well, that 6 is on its own, so we're going to have to put a 0 in front of it and put a decimal point there. Now you've got 2 numbers after the point. Obviously we just put a 0 in front to make it draw attention to the decimal point. 2 numbers behind the point, because there were 2 numbers behind the point in the entire question. If we had 0.3 times 0.4, well, 3 fours are 12. There's already 2 numbers there. 1 number there behind the point, 1 behind the point there. That's 2. There are already 2 numbers here, so the decimal point can come in front of it, and we've still got 2 numbers behind the point. Okay, if we got more than 2 numbers, let's try something like 0.05 times 0.7. So 5 sevens are 35. 2 numbers there behind the point, 1 number behind the point there, that's 3 altogether. We need 3 numbers behind the point. Well, the end of our answer has got to be the last number, so we're going to put a 0 in front of it. I do apologise for this pen today, it's not being very well behaved, is it? Okay, and that's going to be 0.035. When we say you've got to have 3 numbers behind the point, we don't add extra ones after it because they're irrelevant. We've got to put them before it if we don't have enough. Now if we were doing something that we can't do in our head, so far I've just shown you multiplications that you can work out in your head. If it was like a long multiplication, so if we had something like 21.5 times 3.6, then what we would do there is we'd do that as a long multiplication. Let's follow it through and see what happens. Write it out in long multiplication form, 21.5 times 3.6. From this point onwards, I'm going to completely ignore the decimal points, and I'm going to treat it as though it says 215 times 36. So what we would do is 6 5s are 30. Carry that 3. 6 1s are 6, plus the 3 makes 9. 6 2s are 12. And then we would be multiplying by what would be in effect 30, so we stick a 0 down there. 3 5s are 15, carry 1. 3 1s are 3, plus that 1 makes 4. 3 2s are 6. Then we'd add them together. 0 plus 0. 9 plus 5 makes 14. 2 and 4 makes 6, plus 1 is 7. 1 plus 6 makes 7. Now, we've got an answer there, but the answer isn't really 7,740. We go back to do what we did in those original questions now. We look at what we got at the start. How many numbers were there behind a decimal point in the entire question? There's 1 there, the 5. There's another one here, the 6. So there were 2 numbers behind the decimal point in the question, so there need to be 2 numbers behind the decimal point in the answer. So the answer would actually be 77.40. Okay, using the answer that we've got there, 2 numbers behind the point. That just happens to be a 0 in this case, but it doesn't make any difference. It could be a different number. It still counts when it's there. So it's always about counting how many numbers come after the point and making sure that it matches with your answer. That's multiplying decimals. Okay, adding and subtracting exactly like adding and subtracting regular numbers, as long as your decimal points stay in line. Multiplying, just like multiplying regular numbers, but you count how many figures there were after the point in the question and make sure it's the same in the answer. There is a separate video about division because that's a little bit harder. So if you want to do division, look out for the alternative video about decimals with division. But for now, that's everything you need on decimals, adding, subtracting and multiplying. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.